Welcome back to Liberty Bytes on the Think Liberty Network. I'm your host, William Gadsden. You can follow me personally on Twitter at William_Gadsden and follow Think Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever your favorite social media outlet is. Give us a follow and a like for updates on new episodes and more. Now, in the intro episode, I talked about this sort of political tug-of-war that we find ourselves in between liberty and authoritarianism. So I want to expound on that idea a little bit more in this episode and lay out some of the groundwork, give you an idea of what kind of battle we're looking at, as well as what the battlefield itself looks like. So one of the more common misconceptions that I have to address first and foremost, before we can discuss anything else, is the role of the U.S. Constitution in U.S. law. Now, I want to be very clear here. The U.S. Constitution is designed to restrict the government from holding too much power over the people. It is to keep the government in check. It is to protect the people from the government. It is not for one private citizen to hold sway over another. So, for example, if I walk into a Buffalo Wild Wings while carrying a firearm, and I'm told that I am not allowed to carry in that establishment, I can't start yelling about my Second Amendment rights. But if the government tries to outlaw certain types of guns, I absolutely can, and I absolutely should start yelling about my Second Amendment rights. But let's take a broad example. There's very little economic regulation in the Constitution itself. That leaves a lot of room for self-governance among the states, as it should. So if California, for example, wants to enact very strict economic regulations within its state, it can do so. But if it messes up, or say goes bankrupt as a result, it is not the federal government's responsibility to bail it out. Now, in the same way, if a different state enacts loose economic policy and excels because of it, it has every right to do so, and every right to garner the benefits of it and keep that to itself. But if a state enacts a law that is a clear violation of a constitutional amendment, that is when the federal government can and should intervene in order to uphold the rights of the people against all levels of government. Now, a real-world example of this is the case of Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. Now, in this case, a Christian baker declined to make a cake for a gay couple's wedding, as supporting such a union is against his personal religious beliefs. Now, also in play is his right to free expression. On the other side, the gay couple claims that he is breaking a Colorado law against discrimination. The problem, of course, is that government, the state of Colorado, is threatening to make him bake the cake. Excuse me, threatened, this is past tense at this point, and or pay fines or penalties if he chooses not to. Now, as this is a clear breach of the First Amendment rights, the Supreme Court found that the right side of the case ruled that he did not have to bake the cake under coercion. We have to keep the role of the Constitution in mind going forward in this program. Now, the other main idea has been cropping up in modern American society that the Constitution is outdated or otherwise no longer useful to us. I can't emphasize enough how dangerous this idea is. The Constitution is the foundation for all that America was, is, and will become. It is what makes America uniquely great in the world, what has given us individual freedoms and liberties the likes of which no other country has ever seen, and has brought untold wealth and advancement to the rest of the world through the United States. Because we do not venerate the Constitution as we should, we quickly start to justify cherry-picking which amendments we want to uphold and which we don't, which we bend and which ones we leave rigid, based on our own personal feelings or beliefs. This has happened on both the right and the left. We had a huge push from the religious right in the 90s that threatened to encroach on personal liberties based on legalistic views of Christianity. Now it is extreme leftism with a dash of cultural Marxism. But regardless of which side is threatening to press the scales, it is a push for authoritarianism in this country, the antithesis of liberty. I've said it in the introduction episode that we are not right or left. We're not Republican or Democrat. We are liberty-centered, and we will push for the country to be as well, regardless of which side is pushing against that. We cannot afford to allow authoritarianism to push forward in this country anymore. We have to become liberty-centered. We have to return to constitutional norms. Now, the big idea here is that we live in a country with a bottom-up government, not top-down. This means that we can decide for ourselves how to live our lives. without worrying that the government can dictate our behavior as private citizens, much less force us to do things that we don't want to do. The sad fact of the matter is, though, that this bottom-up style of government that was originally intended is slowly being turned the other way. Over the last century, slow incremental growth of government has threatened our way of self-governance in this country. Liberty is eroding, and that tipping point is fast approaching. So how do we address these ongoing issues we find in our society that we feel have to be addressed? So in short, there are two forms of pressure in politics and culture. You have legislative and societal. 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to side with societal. Legislative pressure makes it far too easy for we the people to give up power, and it makes it far too difficult to get that power back. It is far too easy to ask for the government to take care of it, and our government is far too willing to acquiesce. We can no longer afford to be a country that runs to the federal government to fix all of our issues, handing them more and more of our power to take on our responsibilities that were never envisioned by the Founding Fathers for the government to have in the first place. Look at the multitude of extra-constitutional organizations and agencies that have bloated budgets and little effect on the issues that they were ostensibly created to regulate. We have to be big boys and girls and take care of our own issues within the realm of society. The late Andrew Breitbart famously said that politics is downstream from culture, and he was absolutely right. Look at how far we have come in terms of civil liberties for all in the last century alone, the vast majority of that starting with societal pressure. Marches, activism, peaceful protest. All of these things have acted as catalysts for societal change, and were later enshrined into law. But while liberty lovers can agree that most of these things were in the best interest of individual liberty, the once balanced scales are already starting to tip towards the other side. We have to use societal pressure, not legislation, to counteract this change. We have to be activists for liberty. Now, this is a war of ideologies, a war of intellect. It is a war of facts and feelings. It is a war of propaganda, of American hearts and minds. So in the next episode, I'm going to talk to you about how you can become a more effective warrior in this political battle and arm you with some of the most effective tools that you can have in this fight. So I hope that you'll tune in and continue to become more liberty-centered with us. I'm William Gadsden with Think Liberty.